Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Do appreciate catching up again. It's been a while, and just interested in your perspective of your past season and sort of what's upcoming for you guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having me. I enjoy the opportunity to do this. This past fall was, I think we talked about in my first interview, we had 11 incoming players, and we knew there were going to be some challenges associated with that. And I was absolutely adamant in my interview and anybody that talked to me that it was not going to be a rebuilding year. I think that I still maintain that's a cop-out, that, it's an excuse to not find success. We made it back to the postseason for the 6th consecutive season, which, that's a good thing. We fell 1-0 to a team that lost in the conference championship match.
Yeah.
Did we feel like we probably should have won that game? Yes, but at the end of the day, that's not the way this game works. We probably had 2 or 3, maybe 4 games that we felt like we should have done a little bit better in. And yes, our experience or inexperience may have played a role in that, but I think it's just one of those things. That's the beauty of the game that we're talking about here, is that you can find excuses, or you can simply say, hey, today wasn't our day. And those days weren't our days, but we had a great group of kids that, for us, it really became about more than just the wins and losses on the field. We had a 3.2 GPA in the fall with the
nice.
team.
That's big.
It is, and with 11 new players, I think we had 3 freshmen that had 4.0 GPAs.
Wow.
That's not the norm.
No.
We did a lot more service work. We did a number of local youth clinics. We got engaged with the local Humane Society. We actually, just this past weekend, we did an event with local Special Olympics. So we really focused on excellence in all aspects of being a student athlete. And, that transitioned well. We had our spring games 2 weeks ago. We went 2-0 on the day. We won 1-0, and we came back we went down a goal inside the first 3 minutes, and we came back and we won 2-1. And we did that without, the 2 senior all-conference players that we graduated. We did that with a couple of injuries. We lost, arguably, our starting striker, I think 10 minutes into the first game. And so, we had to battle, and our guys really focused on controlling the controllables. And they've put us in a good spot going in, where we're going to have 6 or 7 incoming kids for the fall. But the standard has been set that we're going to strive for excellence. We'll have good days and we'll have bad, but that doesn't stop us from working.
Yeah. That's the only route to success. Taking your knocks and dealing with your knocks. If you ignore them, you're never going to get better, right? You're just going to fall into the same trap over and over and over again.
Right, and that's a big piece. We're talking with our kids in our end-of-year meetings right now. The mindset has drastically shifted as they've gained the experience of, I had a bad day today, and, well, here's 15 reasons why. No, I had a bad day. And, I read his autobiography prior to the full scandal breaking, but Lance Armstrong, in his first book, It's Not About the Bike, talked about his recovery from cancer and his chemo.
Yeah.
And he talked about, when he made his initial comeback, he would get so frustrated because he wasn't winning.
Yeah.
And he initially struggled to understand that it's a process, that recovery takes time.
Yeah.
That rebuilding that strength takes time.
Yeah.
And that's something our guys, it's just like, hey, sometimes you're not going to be at 100%. We all have bad days. And if you choose to accept it, hey, it's just a bad day, you can grind through and you can get better a lot more quickly than if it's like, oh, well, I was stressed out because of class and I didn't hydrate properly. Now, maybe those things can have an impact, and maybe those things are true, but are you allowing them to be the crutch that gives you an excuse. And for us, it's just like, hey, we're going to be better. We had a couple of days this spring where we were far from our best on the training pitch. And I told the guys, I said, if you know specifically what caused you to have a bad day, great. But collectively as a group, we have to come out and we have to be better. And if we strive for that every time, we'll be fine. Again, we had some of our best practices the days after we had rough ones.
Yeah.
Because guys just said, hey, I didn't have a good day and I have to be more mentally prepared, more physically prepared, and I will be better.
Yeah. There's, I don't know, it's probably some, I think it was like some interview or some meme or something like that where, in the totality of a season or in performance, it's all about thirds, right? A third of the practices, games, you play to your or do things to your potential. A third, you sort of you do what you have to do. No glamour, no outstanding, but you just do what you have to do. And then a third where you underperform, and it's what you do in the underperformance that gets you to do more overperformance. Right?
I'm laughing because, and this is crazy because I never get to bring up this reference. Have you ever watched the show The West Wing?
Just a couple. I'm not a big television guy.
So there's an episode, and for any West Wing fans that are out there, there's an early season episode with Rob Lowe, who's playing Sam Seaborn, and he talks about in a Major League Baseball locker room, the manager says, okay, we have 162 games this year. Everybody knows you're going to lose a third of the games, you're going to win a third of the games. It's what you do with the other third that matters. That's going to determine how much of a success things are going to be. And he was making that analogy to politics, but I just couldn't help but laughing as I literally had just watched this episode the other day. Like, oh my gosh, I get to make a West Wing reference. So for anybody watching, yes, I'm a huge history nerd, and those sort of shows I find really interesting.
So congratulations. I will make an award for you. This is the first West Wing reference I think I've had on this channel.
I appreciate that. I'm happy to be a pioneer, and there's probably a bunch of young coaches out there saying, what in the heck is the West Wing?
Well, I drop references to Happy Days, so don't feel...
But the thing is, that was a show, I had a much older brother and sister, and so that was a show that I watched. I make all sorts of references that my kids barely know who Chris Farley is. So we have a couple of mandatory movie days on our bus where we'll watch that. Most of my kids have never seen the movie Major League.
Oh my gosh!
It's one of the
they don't know what they're missing.
That's that Major League 1 and Major League 2 will be mandatory viewing. I'm going to make them turn off their own tablets and stuff. We're watching this on the bus this year because I still own the DVDs, which these kids are like, what are DVDs?
What are DVDs? Hey, all right. So you went 6-11-1.
Yep.
Let me just ask you the boss's question. How would you assess your coaching this season?
That was in the immediate aftermath of the season. That's always the first thing. And I don't think I made it to the locker room of that loss in the playoffs before I realized I had made, in that specific game, I had made a couple of coaching decisions that impacted the outcome of the game. Or at least I think could have impacted the outcome of the game. But beyond that, I think, and I said this in my initial interview with you, that we were going to do everything in our power to make our players prepared to not have it be a rebuild. And I think we did that. I think we laid out the expectations. I think we coached them in a way where we said, we're not going to let the excuse of, oh, you're a freshman and that mistake is going to happen. We wanted them to understand that, no, we're going to we want to set a higher standard here.
Yeah.
Now, I think a couple of areas where I probably should have been, and it was tough because we didn't know initially when we did our schedule we were going to be so young. But I think I scheduled some non-conference games at times that weren't ideal for us, and that falls under coaching to me.
Yeah.
And I think that there were days where squad rotation could have been more impactful for us, 100%. And I think that's something as a coach that I still struggle with of, this is a known entity. I want to stay with that versus, well, this could go well if we try it. And I think that's something that as the season went on, I became a little bit more comfortable with, but I needed to do a little bit more early on.
Yeah.
So, there are absolutely areas for growth for me. There will continue to be, absolutely. And it's funny now having our full end of year meetings and talking with some of the kids who maybe struggled this fall, who had really good springs or continuing to develop. But I found that we created a mechanism in the spring season that allowed for greater communication between the coaching staff and the players.
Yeah.
And the individual players, not just the group. And recognizing that was something that we needed to bring in earlier. That was something that we had a means and we had access to during the fall, and now it's helped us a ton, but that's something we know we have to stick with going forward. So little things like that, I'm always going to be critical of my own coaching and decisions that I've made or didn't make. I think that's one of the reasons why I know 15 years in that this is what I want to keep doing, because I'm still striving and I'm wrapping up my master's right now in strategic communication, and there are so many things in the last class that I'm taking about communicating change is a huge subject we're talking about right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, God, like just that little extra bit that I could have done, bringing in an outside source to help me communicate that change, whether it's an assistant, a captain, a leader within the team, somebody within the college itself. Those little things are, they're going to continually add up. And that's going to be stuff we're really going to strive for going forward.
I'm looking at your schedule from this past season, and I don't know if, to me, I look at your schedule and I'm like, you're close. Like there are 5 games that if you just, they're one-go differentials that if you just flipped, like you're now 11-6-1, and who knows where to, or
there's a couple of other ties in there.
Exactly.
And I think, again, you look at those, and there are a number of games where that really stands out to us where, the Potsdam game, we had a couple really good chances to score. The Bard game, we may have played one of the best 30 minutes of soccer, the last 30 minutes of that game this year. That one, the Delhi, the postseason game, that was a 1-goal game. Those certainly stand out. The Maine Farmington game, we actually had a goal disallowed inside the first 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh!
That probably shouldn't have been, and that drastically influenced the outcome of that game. That
changes the complexion of a game, if that's the case, right? For positive or negative. In your case, negative, right?
Well,
it's just
it was a boost for them. It was it took some wind out of our sails. But again, you can easily look at that and say coulda, woulda, shoulda. But I think it's the experience from those games and the fact that we're bringing back so many kids that participated in and watched those games, that experienced those games, that can say, hey, we can't let a minor setback like that impact us. So I'm always looking big picture. Losing those 1-goal games that we arguably could have done better in this year help us for the upcoming season. It goes to people. There's always the argument of, do spring games mean anything? That's a very common thread on the D3 boards too.
That's my big thing, like spring.
I think those games do have value. They don't count statistically, and yes, it's is the team you're playing against 100%, and because the game doesn't count as everybody full tilt. But again, for us, going down a goal 3 minutes in and coming back and scoring 2 to win a game, like that's huge.
That's a huge deal.
That shows kids who, again, with a younger squad, guys that didn't see a ton of minutes. We had two kids playing in our spring games that missed the entire fall because they were injured.
Yeah.
For them to have that experience of, hey, we can come back from a goal down.
Yeah.
Like that's nothing. We've already and we played two 50-minute games. So the fact that we did that in less than the course of an 87-minute period, like that's a huge mental boost.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that gets talked about a lot is, well, it's about physically who shows up and who dominates. Yes, that plays a role. But let's not downgrade the value of the mental side of those wins.
Yeah.
I've got a kid that I met with him this morning, actually. It was his second year with the team. He didn't play a ton. And he really struggled. He's a great kid, tremendously hard worker, but he just wasn't at the standard we needed him to be at. And he was also playing the same position as one of our all-conference players. But he was struggling. He was frustrated. He's a dual sport athlete here. He's playing baseball. He is the number one pitcher in our baseball rotation. He's lost 3 games this year in which he has given up 1 run in 6 or more innings.
Wow.
Like he threw a 1-hitter the other day through 6 innings and lost. Or the team lost. But the confidence that he's picked up from his role in baseball,
that translates.
He trained with us this spring where it didn't conflict. He was a totally different player.
Yeah.
Now, there's not a lot of correlation between being a pitcher in baseball and being an outside back on the soccer field. But his confidence level, it put him in a position where he's going to be challenging for a starting spot with us in the fall.
Yeah.
So the mental bonus that you can get from these things, that you can get from spring or being involved in something that you do well in, it's incredible. And I think that's something that gets overlooked. It's like, oh, he's not a good player. Maybe there's more going on, and it's very easy to be an armchair analyst when you don't see what that kid's got going on.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the kid's also, and he's always been a decent student, but he's having a tremendous semester at midterms. He had like a 3.7 GPA.
Sometimes it's just that maturity, right? Like, freshman to sophomore year is a big, big thing.
It is.
Right? Just maturity. Yep. You go one of two ways. You can become more immature like I did, or you become more mature as my sons have done.
Right. Well, and again, it's about finding what your role is. Finding where you fit, and then trusting that who you are is the person that people want to know. And I think that's a big thing within our program too, is we have a very welcoming and friendly group that it's not about where you're from, it's about who you are here. Yeah. And that, again, that's what he also found was he's like, I can be me. Yeah. And the guys like me for me, and wow, that's a very different setup than high school is sometimes.
Yeah. I'm actually looking at your roster, and I mean, the other thing to note is indeed how young you are. Like how young overall your squad is. I mean, you're definitely, it seems to me, more than half are sophomores and freshmen.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So whatever bumps, bruises, and challenges you encountered this year, that's going to become armor for next year, right?
Correct.
Like that's the way I look at that. For the younger guys, the older guys, it's what it is or where they're at. But for the younger guys,
that's very much something we've taken a look at too. Is we had a lot of guys last year, or this past fall, who they had to step into bigger roles because we graduated 12 kids the year before,
right?
And they weren't quite ready to do it to the extent we maybe asked them to. But now they've got a year's experience in that role, so they're going to come back stronger. We were able, we had a couple of freshmen who I think had really, really good years, and they're in a position now to take on more. But we had some freshmen that they went through some growing pains, but they were also a big part of the spring squad, and now they're better prepared as well. And, we're looking at our recruiting class, and that's been recruiting this year, and I'm sure other coaches will have echoed this. Recruiting this year has been different than in past years, and we all probably say that every year. We started out in January, if you had asked me how many transfers are you going to have and how many true freshmen are you going to have, I would have said 95% of my incoming class will be true freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at my board this morning, and we're looking at as many as 5, possibly 6 transfers,
Wow.
and only 2 to 3 true freshmen.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just the way things have gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've lost some recruits to some very good programs, which makes me know we're recruiting the right kid. It doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Yeah.
But you know you're looking at the right kids. The other part is, and I know this has been a big topic of discussion everywhere, including on the D3 boards, but we haven't been diving into the transfer portal the way some of these other programs have. That's not who SUNY Canton is.
Right.
Where I think we're talking to one kid in sort of specific circumstances who's in the transfer portal. And it's not. I was literally glancing to see if anybody from any schools in our conference were in there.
Yeah.
So just again, curiosity more than anything. And we came across a kid who's at another New York State kid who's at a bigger school where he just wasn't playing. Mm-hmm. And we had some ties to his program, his high school program, his club program, sort of thing. So, but other, some junior college kids have found us, some non-NCAA kids have found us, and that's great. But, we're going to be adding in some kids that have got experience at the college level. Like, we're going to go from having been a very young team to being a team that has a good amount of experience.
That's huge.
It's massive, and I think our league is going to continue to get better. EJ Ruderman down at Delhi has done a terrific job turning that program. And I mean, they knocked us out. They lost in the final.
Yeah.
They almost tied that final in the final minutes of the game.
That's what he said. Yeah,
he's done a terrific job. SUNY Poly is always very good. We've got a couple of new teams coming into the conference. It's always going to be a highly competitive league, but we've given ourselves the opportunity to remain competitive and to continue to push where, I really think there's 13, 14 teams in our league now, but there's, 6, maybe 7 teams that legitimately have a shot at winning the conference championship every year. Yeah. As opposed to some of these other leagues where this team, these 1, maybe 2 teams are going to be there every year. Yeah. And that's exciting and that's fun. And it's about getting your team hot at the right time of year, riding a little bit of luck, absolutely. Yeah. But that's what makes it fun, is you have these opportunities.
You got to be challenged, right? Like that's what you want. I would say you don't want the challenge. You don't not want to be as an athlete, right? What's that next level? What's that? And if you're not, you're really not an athlete as far as I'm concerned, right? Like
I don't disagree with you. It's not. I don't want to have a cakewalk to a championship. I want to walk away. I want to be exhausted.
Earning it.
I want to feel like I earned this.
Yeah.
And that's something our guys also, we aren't, and Mike Toshak and I are really good friends over at St. Lawrence, but we're not St. Lawrence.
Yeah.
We're not the same type of team.
Yeah.
We're not Amherst. We're not Tufts. Kyle, don't yell at me for saying that when but we're a very gritty, grinded out type of team. That's who you have to be when you're us.
Yeah.
And
that's okay. You know what I mean? Like you're just this circumstance. I always, the circumstance of who your student athletes are, who you're able to recruit. Like that's okay. I mean, every coach does that. Okay, what are my for the most part, I will say. Yep. Who are my players? What capacity do they have to do, and what's the best way to put them together to win? And if it is grinding out gritty and battling for every ball, that's it. Like that's your formula for success. Not everybody plays beautiful, pretty soccer. You know what I mean? Like it would be great if we did. But the reality is that there's a range of ways you can play
Right.
and pick and choose and move and variations. So
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, I've always maintained that, and again, I have friends that coach in the NESCAC, that coach in the
yeah,
Liberty League, coach in the SUNY and yeah, they play a
yeah,
great brand of soccer.
yeah.
But that doesn't devalue any other program out there.
Mm-hmm.
I coached it 6 years for Southern Vermont College, which we were the smallest school in the NCAA. And we competed while we were there. We made ECACs one year
Mm-hmm.
after losing in the final. And we had to play Brandeis on a Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the year they were probably the last team out of the NCAA tournament. This
Right.
was back in 2011.
Oh, yeah.
And they were very bitter about not having gotten into the NCAAs.
Yeah.
And Mike Coven was still coaching there at
Uh-huh.
that point, and I knew what we were in for. My players didn't necessarily, but I'm like, we are playing a very angry,
Yeah.
snub team right
Yeah.
now.
Beware.
They beat us 1-0, 2-0. And we actually had a chance to tie the game with about 5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
And it was our kid that he's one of the program's all-time leading goal scorers. He was a first-team all-conference player of the year kid, and he still to this day cannot believe he missed the chance.
Yeah.
So we end up losing to them. It was 1 or 2-0, and Mike said, he's like, "Wow, you guys, you made our lives miserable for
Yeah,
90
yeah.
minutes." They won the semifinal 4-0 or 7-0, and they won the final by the same score.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they cruised
Yeah,
through
yeah.
the other games.
Yeah.
But again, it was who we were,
Yep.
and our players embraced that.
Yeah.
We had to live and die on the counterattack, and it was who we were that year, at least
Yeah.
in that setting.
Yeah.
And for us, we recognize, we're playing St. Lawrence, we're playing Clarkson. Yeah, we're gonna have to be practical about our approach to those games. We're not gonna outpossess St. Lawrence. I'm sorry, it's not
No.
gonna happen.
And you know what? Like, not a lot of teams would.
Correct.
Of the 400 how many teams would outpossess St. Lawrence?
That's exactly
Right?
it.
That's the reality.
So,
It's not just a you thing. It's like,
No.
look, it's reality. They're that good in possession.
and so again,
Yeah.
we embrace who we are, and I think you look back over the history. I go back to the Jurgen Klinsmann area, the U.S. national team. Why was that team not as good as it could have been? Because he tried playing a style
Yeah.
with the players that couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Michael Bradley was not a 10.
Yeah.
Alejandro Bedoya was not a 6, especially against Brazil. Like, in
Yeah.
what realm was that ever going to work? And those little decisions matter.
Yeah.
Conceptually, what he was talking about was right.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the horses for it, you don't put. I'm mixing 87 and metaphors. You don't put square pegs in round holes.
Phil's. Yeah.
And that was something that I think Bob Bradley certainly understood with our team. I think a few others. Sorry, my office line is
No, it's okay.
ringing on me here. But even Greg Berhalter and people, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole we probably don't need to
Yeah.
go down. But he got the most out of a lot of players on that team.
Yeah.
And that's what an effective and good coach and a well-run program does. And there are a lot of small schools out there, especially in the D3 realm, that, there are very good coaches who embrace who they are. And are they ever going to get the plaudits of the upper echelon top? No. And that's okay, because that's not why we do it. That's not, I love what I do. I have, even on the hardest days, I have so much fun doing this. We ran our ID clinic this past weekend in a torrential downpour.
Yeah.
And I've run ID clinics in snowstorms, and oh my gosh, it's cold and it's tough to assess, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And when the
Worst places to be, that's for sure.
Well, when the student athletes see you enjoying that, their experience increases.
Yeah.
So, and that's how they get the most out of their time in your program.
Yeah.
That's a cool thing.
I was just going to say, just because something you said about coaches embracing the way they play, I do think that there are I mean, I don't have any evidence other than my own observations and sort of conversations, but I do think that there are coaches out there, and probably more so at the, I think at the club level, like before going to college, that I almost think that they have this is who I wish the players were, not who they really are. And so they pick players based on that wish, like, oh, this guy's going to be able to do this, that, and the other. And when the reality is that that's not the type of player they are. That's not what they bring to the table in a game. And as a result, you see guys, like I said, I just think that makes you underperform. I would say, how do you put on a field 11 guys in a way to be successful?
Right.
Well, and
again,
sometimes that's acknowledging, right? It's acknowledging what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. I mean,
when you see it as a referee, you know, what should the goal of club soccer be? Or youth soccer be? What has it become are two very different
things. Absolutely.
And you know, we had you know, it used to be club soccer. It was development. It was a tool for college coaches to have another avenue to see kids for the kids who were truly passionate about it to continue their growth. And you know, we had a number of kids who wanted to come to our IED clinic, and their coach said, "Well, you have to make a choice between playing college soccer or being committed to our club." Well, club soccer is supposed to help me get to college. And again, I said, look, if you're committed to your club, I understand. You know, I'm not going to sit here and make decisions for kids. That's a decision they have to come to. And I'm not going to hold it against them for making a decision they feel is in their best interest. Do I wish they could have come to our clinic? Absolutely. I will work hard to make sure I have another opportunity to see them play. But the fact that it's, well, no, like, you need to come to club stuff. We need it's a money-making thing, and we have to win games. That's not what club soccer was. I don't want to say it's not what it's there for. But it's what it's become.
Certainly.
And I'm sure you've seen all the posts, and I've seen a couple of your comments that are like, we've got U9 tryouts where they're doing fitness testing. Are you want to talk about?
I love that. If they were talking about the same thing, I laughed. I'm like, this is awesome.
It's not every club. It's not. I would even argue it's not widespread. But the fact that it's out there,
exactly.
In this sport, new things get cloned. And it's, well, we want to keep up with that club long term. We need to start doing that stuff now too. And, you know, I applaud the clubs to say, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to talk from, you know, U12 and down. We're going to do development. We're going to work on fundamental skills. We're going to teach systems and styles of play. And then, yes, when you get to the older elite stuff, fine, you can build that in. But, you know, can you imagine being 9 years old and being told your body
the beep test?
What?
Yo-yos, woo!
And it's just, you want to talk about why we have a burnout and a mental health problem in this country with athletes.
I don't doubt that at all.
So,
and it's not just soccer. Let's be clear.
It's not.
Not just.
Basketball,
hockey, baseball. Some of the stuff the baseball guys go through is crazy too.
And it's one of those things. Like I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to say I have all the answers on how to fix that stuff.
Yes, we do. That's why we're talking. This is why.
Well, I have some ideas, not all of them, and I certainly don't know how to implement it. But you know, people much smarter than me can figure that stuff out. But it's just, we need to change drastically the way we're approaching some of those things, for sure.
I think, so this is my latest theory. I think part of the problem is that what started out with a very clear objective is that we're going to take, in soccer, because this is where we're at, we're going to take kids and we're going to make them get better or help them get better and understand the game more. And by default, like that process of growing up, where he ends up, it doesn't really matter. And then we started sort of moving that goal further and further and higher and higher. And now you got guys talking about pyramids with paths to professionals, that might apply to 1% of 1% of all soccer play. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that applies. Like it's not they're the majority, again, just this observation, majority of players don't think about that. They're just thinking, hey, this is a blast. You know, this is great. I want to be a better soccer player. How do I become a better soccer player? Ooh, I saw those moves. And how do you capture that enthusiasm when you have a club that's like path to pro? Hey, you're not physical enough. You're down. Hey, you're too small.
Yeah.
You're down. Like, it just, again, I just think we've warped that whole sense, again, just because of who's driving the conversation around that.
Well, it's so as you're saying all of this, it's something that again, I go back to my individual meetings, but I just wrote this down, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Find
it.
joy.
Yeah,
Like,
that's it.
how much better will things be? And
Yep.
you know, when we talk to kids from club, again, the amount of high level or professional soccer that people have access to now.
Yeah.
When I talk to a kid from south of Albany, New York, and down, and I say, you know, like, hey, you're not terribly far from New York City. I mean, if you're in Albany, you're within 2 to 3 hours. Have you been down to see the Red Bulls or City FC play? And they're like, no. Like,
Yeah.
why aren't clubs in, like, I know because I have a friend who used to work with the Red Bulls. They do discounted group pricing for clubs.
Yeah.
Like there was a program with the Red Bulls, and I don't know if it's still there, but club teams within, I think, 30 miles of New York City could bring their entire team for $5 a person.
Yeah.
Like,
We did that
them.
years ago when my kids were younger. Yeah, get them out there.
You know,
Different
and
side of
there's
it. Yeah.
throughout the Northeast, again, like, and I know other coaches have talked about this. Kids just say, "Oh, I think I'm a great fit for your level." Well, have you seen us play? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then how do you know what our level is?
Yeah.
And it's, you know, we recruit a lot out of Central New York, and I tell kids all the time, I'm like, you need to go watch Syracuse University play.
Yeah.
Not just because I like Ian and Yuka and Carter,
Yeah.
but like it's such a good level, and they run that program the right way,
Yeah.
and it's accessible.
Yeah.
Like go see high level soccer. We're talking with our kids. I have a number of kids on my team from Plattsburgh. Drive an hour north to Montreal. Don't get in trouble, but go to an impactor. It's at Montreal FC now.
Yeah.
Go to a game. There are no bad seats in that stadium, and you can see a great level of play.
The fun, that's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of kids, again, just in my experience, have an overinflated sense of how good they think they are, in one part because of what the clubs do, right, and sort of how they boost the players, and they play in a very sanitized environment, right, and so and their failure to watch the soccer that is around them, right? Because they're so focused on themselves, and they're so focused on whatever their particular team is, and they don't lift their heads to see all the soccer. So to your point, or to whoever that coach was, who's like, have you ever seen us play? Then how do you know what level you're at? And that's because they don't. I don't think they watch the Premier League, and that's almost like that Valhalla, you know, that mythical thing, right? Like that's huge entertainment Hollywood. Like I'm never going to get there. But the rest of it, it's just I'm good because I am, right? It just doesn't.
Well, and that's so I do like some private training and stuff throughout the year. Generally goalkeepers, but occasionally some field players. And there's a young woman I'm working with who wants to go to Clarkson and play for Coach Ward.
Yeah.
And she's entering her junior year, so it's an important year as far as that sort of stuff goes. She's never played outside of Section 10 in Northern New York.
Yeah.
Now, for those that aren't familiar with Section 10 in Northern New York, it's not the highest level soccer. It's probably one of the lowest levels of high school soccer in the state of New York. And I flat out asked her, I'm like, have you been to see Clarkson play? Well, not yet. Okay, well, it's 5 minutes from your house. You need to go.
Yeah.
You need to see this team play.
Yeah.
And you need to expose yourself. You need to go to some, if you're dead set on going to Clarkson, that's great. You need to go to a training environment in the summer outside of what I can provide and see what other kids are looking to go there.
Yeah.
You need to go to an ID camp that they're at.
Yeah.
because that's the level you're going to
That's
be
right.
assessed against.
That's the easiest one, right? Like
And
roadbook
that's,
ID camp, you're going to know pretty quickly sort of
yeah,
where
and
you
I
stack.
know she hasn't played outside of Section 10. That's going to be the most valuable experience for
Yeah.
her in her development of, wow, I
Yeah.
thought I was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a long ways to, like, I have a lot of competition.
Yeah.
And that's a very, and I grew up in small town New York. I didn't play club soccer.
Yeah.
I was a standout player where I grew up.
Yeah.
I also knew when I got to college that I was not going to be a big fish anymore.
Yeah.
And I was realistic to that, and I was very, my parents kept me very well grounded in that. My college coach kept me very well grounded in that. And I had some coaches growing up that, I'm 5'5". My wife somewhere is laughing, saying you're not 5'5", you're maybe 5'4". And I was a goalkeeper.
On a hill, you're 5'5",
Yeah,
right?
a very tall hill. I'm still taller than her. That's all that matters. She probably won't see this, so I can get away with that. But I played basketball and soccer growing up, and I was a goalkeeper and I was a guard. And I had coaches who said, "You've got to be fundamentally perfect in these other areas,
Yeah.
and you have to work incredibly hard." As a goalkeeper, I had to work very hard on handling crosses.
Yeah.
Especially at Juniata, we were playing Messiah, we were playing Elizabethtown. Our non-conference schedule was Johns Hopkins, Case Western, Carnegie Mellon.
Still
Like,
is.
But
Yeah.
but it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm as a goalkeeper. My first game, I played Carnegie Mellon. My first game, their center striker was 6'3".
Yeah. Yeah.
I was not 6'3" or close to it.
Yeah.
So I had, but I became aware and knew what I had to do, and I was realistic about what I needed to work on. And I think that's something, I think some clubs have gotten a lot better about that.
Yeah.
I still think some clubs, they want to, nope, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah. There's plenty of
And
those. Plenty
So,
of those.
that's, again, that is what it is. But
When I was, it's funny you say that because when I was playing, after college, I thought I was pretty good, and I'm thinking, oh, I could do this for a living, and ended up going to Spain, and it was it became very quickly, it became obvious that being pretty good puts you in like a pool of a lot of pretty good goalkeepers,
yeah.
right? And that there's you to get out of that pool, like it's very difficult because it's so hard. And it was an eye opener for me because I'm like,
Yep.
oh, like, hey, and so anyhow.
Well, we had a kid a few years ago who went to Europe to play. He ended up playing in the 3rd or 4th division of Romania. And he did well there. He was a starter every game for them. He was tactically, he had the highest soccer IQ out of any player I've ever coached. Tactically, he was brilliant. He was not the most athletic. He was not the fastest. Technically, he was one of the most sound. And again, he understood scanning and field vision and positioning and anticipation. And he actually told me between year 1 and year 2, he had a couple of friends go over and trial with the club that were D1 players, scholarship level players. They didn't last more than 2 weeks. Because athletically they were at the level, but tactically
they're not.
Couldn't. And that's okay. That's not that they're not bad players.
Right.
That doesn't take away from the experience, but it's about finding that right fit. And again, he realized what he needed to do to be at that level. And for, we're a country that awards athleticism.
Oh,
we really do. And until we can catch up tactically, we're gonna struggle.
I think that's our big gap, and I think it's again, and not to go into the whole club soccer thing again, but I do think it's largely driven at that level where there's such the priority, and I understand it, right? Clubs, to make a name, do have to win. They do have to perform, otherwise they're not going to attract the best. So like this vicious cycle. But I do think that they end up, what I'll say is just taking the shortcut of, it's the big, fast, strong, right? Like those guys, and the slower, more thoughtful, tactically aware, thinking about the game in a little bit different ways, they're sort of sacrificed because it's the perception is that, one, they're not going to have the impact, and two, it's too hard to get the other players to sort of play in a way that will benefit. You know,
Well,
and I don't know, I don't know what the answer is there, right? Like,
well, there's risk associated with it, and you have to manage how much risk you're willing to take. And again, you look at, you think back to some of the best players. Again, Messi, everybody said was undersized. Iniesta, no, he's too slow. Xavi, he's too slow. And yes, I'm a huge Barcelona fan, and I always will be. But Pep Guardiola, same thing. Like he's, it's like no, he's not. But they don't all have to be Lewandowskis. They don't all have to be Haalands.
No, right.
There's a role for these other players, but as a club, are you willing to take a risk that and I look at my starting center back this past year is 5'2".
Yeah.
I want you to think about that. And a team that went to the conference postseason, he's 5'2".
Yeah.
His older brother was one of the best holding midfielders I've ever had. Mm-hmm. He was 5'3".
Yeah.
We took a calculated risk that they could play the game well enough.
Yeah.
That their size wasn't going to hinder them.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it worked out. And again, my coach took a risk with me as a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I mean, he handed me the starting reins my freshman year against Messiah.
Yeah.
Which I was not overly appreciative of at the time. I was like, my honest thought was, am I being punished? That's a heck of a game to decide that's where we're going with this. And thankfully, I only gave up 2 goals that game because that could have had a very different ending. But it was a risk associated with, we've got a couple of taller goalkeepers on the bench, but the risk was there, and I appreciated him taking that, and I hope, I repaid that a little bit. We won a few games at least while I was there.
Yeah.
So, no, it's one of those things that a club has to make a decision, a coach has to make a decision, and, it's not always about the short-term benefit. And that's the hardest thing, I think, for clubs
to do.
that are for-profit. Long-term isn't always something they can take a risk with.
Yeah. I agree with you. Hey, this has been fantastic. I can totally go talk about this for hours and just sort of, fix it. By the time you're done, you fixed it all, and we're all good, and we just need to get somebody to listen,
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to wrap up here. I just wanted to ask you just sort of what your recruiting class looks like. Again, you lost a lot of guys, so I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to make that up. And again, already knowing you're young, and some of these guys have a world of experience already with just one season under their belt. Yeah,
so we set out this year. We were going after a number of pretty high-level kids, good high school teams, good club teams. Some of them have panned out, some of them have not. They've chosen other schools. It's crazy to be talking here on May 4th that we're still working on this class, but with transfers and rolling admissions, that's the boat we're in.
Yeah.
I've often remarked that recruiting 11 kids last year was easier than recruiting 6 kids this year.
Yeah.
We had a couple kids leave the team for various reasons this past year. We lost one of our kids mid-year last year. He was an Army reservist, and he got deployed to Africa.
Oh my gosh.
He'll be back actually this fall, which is great. We're really excited to have Leighton coming back with us and appreciate his service to our country.
Thank you for his service, indeed.
Yep. Great kid. He really didn't want to go, but it was one of those things that he made the commitment to do it, and he did what he needed to do.
Right.
He's a great, hardworking kid, so we're excited to have him back. So right now we're looking at 2 to 3 true incoming freshmen. We're still trying to wrap one up. I'm hoping after tonight I'll have a few more answers on him.
Yeah.
We've got, I got to look at my board. 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 transfers. 2 of them junior college, 2 of them 4-year schools.
Right.
And the junior college kids are from the New York State system. They both went, they did their associate degrees. Now they're rolling in.
And that just makes it easier, right, for
It
them
does.
academically.
Yep.
Like they get, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny. One of them is a kid that wanted to come here as a freshman out of high school, and we told him, "You need to go somewhere where you're going to play. You need to develop. You need to grow." He went and he did that, and now he came. It's funny. He came back to our fall ID clinic, and about 10 minutes in, we are like, "Man, did that kid get the message?"
Yeah, yeah.
And he's going to be coming in and challenging for a starting spot with us, which is great. So we're really excited about this group. The incoming freshmen are they're coming from good levels. One of them actually plays club soccer from an alum and former captain, which is part of the reason he found his way to us, which is awesome. The other one's coming out of one of the best high school programs in the state of New York at Shazy High School. A bad year for them is not making the state Final Four.
Nice.
And it hasn't happened in a really long time. And we have a really strong history of players from that program coming in and being impact players here, which is great. So we're really excited about this incoming class. We've got a lot going on here. As we wrap up, we have officially, probably tomorrow, I will officially be sending in the deposit, but we're going to take our first ever international trip next spring.
Wow, nice.
So we're
Where are we going?
We're going to Iceland.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's an interesting place.
It is. It's a great opportunity. It's not one of the normal locations.
Definitely
you know,
not.
we narrowed our choices down to Costa Rica and Iceland. We presented the merits of both trips, the costs with both trips, the fundraising programs with both trips, and the players voted overwhelmingly. They wanted to go to Iceland, which I'm excited about. Actually, one of the guys that was a groomsman in my wedding lives in Reykjavik, so I'll get to see him for the first time since 2015 when I got married. So we've got a lot going on with that, and it's something the players are really excited about. We're going to go in March, which is a little bit colder weather-wise, but the opportunity to potentially see the Northern Lights. We've got a training session set up with the Icelandic national team coaching staff, who are all UEFA A certified coaches. We're going to be there right before the final window of European qualifying.
Ooh,
So
maybe
some of the national team players are probably going to be in, which will be cool. It's shaping up to really be an absolutely fantastic trip. And again, we as I digress slightly to the youth soccer discussion, Iceland has done the most with the smallest amount. Every village has an indoor soccer facility. They, and it's funny, as we were going through the search process, I talked with the staff at UVM, and they've been there with their club side, and they're like, you need to do this trip. Like, you will, there is nothing you will be disappointed with. So we're really excited about that. The guys are pumped. The fundraising has begun in earnest, because it's something where we aren't a school where we can simply say, hey, we want to do this trip. We've got to fundraise. We will fundraise probably almost, close to 2/3 of the cost of the trip. We will fundraise to ensure that every player on our roster can go.
That's fantastic.
But
I'm super excited to go. Like, thanks for that.
So
like, I was looking.
If you want to do a on-site podcast,
that would be.
We can talk about how that might work. So
from one of the springs, the hot water springs there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It was funny. I told my wife, and she's like, "So family can go on this trip, right?" I was like, "Well, we'll chat about that. Probably have to figure out what we're doing with the kids for that, because I don't know if I can handle everybody there during that." But no, I think that's another avenue, though, as we talk about growth of a program and experience that a program can provide. It's not just about wins and losses. It's about the kids on our team that have never been outside of New York or the Northeast or ever been on a plane.
Yeah.
When are you going to have an opportunity for this price to go to Europe for a week?
Yeah, and it could be some for some, like the only thing they ever really do. I mean, ever do, but they don't get a chance to go even to a place like, they might go to London, but Iceland is like a really.
Well, and when are you going to get to do it and play competitive soccer?
Yeah.
Like I mean, we're a family unit here.
Yeah.
You're going to get to go for 8 days and play soccer with your family and your closest friends.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might take your family on vacation. You're not going to be playing soccer. I can vouch for this. You're going to be chasing your children around endlessly, and you're going to need a vacation when you get home from your vacation.
Yeah.
This is just a great opportunity to go and experience something that otherwise you may never get to do. And, there's educational components to our trip. There are service components to our trip. And so, again, it's
awesome.
Not just about going and playing soccer. It's about a whole experience that helps our kids.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're really excited about.
Yeah, I will say, like, I've always been a fan of Iceland since that, and it's gonna speak volumes of me. One of my favorite movies is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It's like I just love that. I don't know why. It's better than Roadhouse. So
there's so much truth to that statement. But it's one of those things that we have these moments that trigger connections for us.
Yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, we first got satellite television. I was 13 years old. Otherwise, I had like 5 channels where I grew up. And I would come home from school and I would watch Saved by the Bell on WGN out of Chicago. But some days it wouldn't be on because the Chicago Cubs were playing.
Yeah.
And I grew up like that was. I want to go to Wrigley Field. I am not. I'm a Cubs. I've been a Cubs fan, but like, I have no ties to Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't. I wasn't born there. I don't have family. But like, that looks like such a cool place.
Yeah.
And again, same thing. We had ties to Boston. I want to go to Fenway.
Yeah.
And I've been to Fenway now, and like those iconic things. Iceland's the same thing.
Yeah. Not to mention, it's just spectacular. Just the beauty of it, natural beauty of it is just.
Well, and we have so many outdoor excursions planned to the geysers, to the hot springs, to the glaciers.
They do like horseback camping.
Yep.
I don't know if that's something you're going to do, but
we opted out of that one.
For obvious reasons.
But going to the southern coast. And, we're going to hike to some glaciers, to some waterfalls. There's just, and it's geographically, it's something that we don't have access to right here.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about being able to take our kids to do these things. They're all committed to it, which is the biggest thing. And the thing I love about our program, and this is something I talk, coaches get asked, like, talk about the culture of your program.
Yeah.
You've seen our roster. We have a very diverse roster from a lot of different backgrounds, from a lot of different places. We have some kids who can just, their families can cut a check and they can go on this trip. We have some kids who need to fundraise every dime.
Yeah.
Our whole group made it very clear to me from the beginning, we're not leaving a single person behind on this trip that wants to go.
Yeah.
If that means I have to pay a little bit more or I need to fundraise more,
so be it. Yeah.
And
that's
good. Such a cool thing. Because culturally, there's a lot of, I'm out for myself. And yes, my long-term success matters.
Yeah.
But if I can have a positive influence on the other people around us, then I want to do that, and we have that within our team. Yeah. And I was very moved and very proud of our kids. And I had a couple of kids who came. I had a couple of families to me that came and said, "What do we need? Who do we need to support? How can we support to make sure every single kid goes?"
Yeah.
And
that's
to
awesome.
me, that speaks volumes about we're doing something right here.
Yeah. Hey, Coach, I hate to cut it short here, but I actually have I'm late to a meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I shouldn't have said that. Maybe if my boss is watching, he's like, I know which meeting you're missing. No, but hey, thank you very much for this. Really enjoyed as always. We will let's connect maybe in August before your season as you get closer and get your perspectives on how things are going to roll.
Yes, absolutely. And you've got to get me your address. I've got a few things that we need to get in the mail for you.
Absolutely.
So we've got some pretty cool things here that I'd like to send your way. And, I really appreciate your support. I said it before. I'll say it again. The fact that you're continuing to do this to let all of us small fish have a voice, be seen, but hear some of the things we have to say. I truly appreciate that. I told my wife this morning, I was like, I'm excited to go to work today. And she's like, don't you just have meetings all day? I'm like, yeah, but I got one meeting in the middle of all of this that I am pumped for.
Yeah.
I really enjoy. I
love hearing. Listen. I just love. I always say, and where I've had success in my career and my personal life has always been about building. Mm-hmm. And what can I do? What can I do to make today better than yesterday? All this sorts of things. And so I get that not everyone's going to be the top dog, and so I just love the fact that there's guys there like you at a school that and is doing what you're doing, and applying it every day, and having such a positive impact ultimately on kids who come through. So
I think the beauty in what coaches get to do, we all talk about ideology and perfect world scenarios and everything. You can be realistic and still maintain some of those perfect best case scenario things. You got to work at it. And you talk about, like, by the time we make this trip to Iceland happen, yes, I'm going to be exhausted. I will like, I'm already a little bit exhausted, but it will be so worth it in the end. And that's how I feel about coaching. And a lot of coaches I've talked to that are retiring is like, I'm tired, but man, what a ride, and I had so much fun doing it.
All right, Coach. Thanks a million.
Let you get out of here.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks. If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.